Hello, kia ora. I'm Philip Duncan. It is Friday, August the 15th. Thank you for joining me. We've got high pressure crossing over the country at the moment and into Saturday, but very quickly, that high pressure zone over New Zealand moves out to the east. To the north, there are a couple of things going on. We've got a couple of centres of low pressure around Norfolk Island that's producing some of these thunderstorms that you can see showing up. Further to the north, you can see a big blob of bright cloud here moving along quickly. That's part of the jet stream, very high up in the atmosphere. And then north of that, you've got more thunderstorms heading in towards parts of Fiji, the convective cloud there building up. So most of that is north of us. High pressure is in control, but the low pressure zones north of us will get mixed in to the weather around New Zealand over the weekend and next week. On top of that, here is the cold front coming through the southeast side of Australia. Wind gusts around Tasmania this morning up to 100 kilometres an hour, and snow is expected down to just a couple of hundred metres around Tassie over the weekend, and even some frosty weather going up to Queensland. So that cold stuff is coming our way as we go into next week. So let me try and break it down for you. Here is the high pressure zone going into the later part of today. It is basically crossing over right over the top of the nation tonight, and then by Saturday it goes out to our east. You can see these series of low pressure zones to the north. They're all a bit messy, and I said yesterday they're all sort of stealing energy from each other. Then you've got the cold change happening in Australia, and it's only just starting now. Big storm directly south of Tasmania and south of New Zealand. Low air pressure, 930 hectopascals. So that's a really stormy system, sustained winds around it of 100, 110 kilometres an hour. So that's a powerful system. Doesn't look likely to bring up too much severe weather for New Zealand, but that cold southerly behind it, that is on its way coming in next week. So frosty weather pretty much melts away in a number of places going into the weekend. The northerly winds are developing on Saturday, melt the frosts away over the South Island, and by Sunday, as warmer airflow, more cloud comes into the North Island, frost pretty much disappear there. So a lot of the frosty weather basically around the mountains where you would expect them to be. Noon Saturday, so see what I mean? The high has gone from the Tasman Sea out over the Pacific Ocean, north of the Chatham Islands. North of that, stretches all the way up to the tropical area. So that's why that milder airflow coming down around the back end of the high is coming all the way down even into the South Island. Now it's not overly warm, but it lifts the temperatures up just enough to reduce those frosts. A little bit of wet weather around the far north and Northland. That might creep further down. Keep an eye on the rain radar during Saturday if that matters to you. Look at Sunday's cold change in Australia right up to Queensland. And so frosty weather is expected in Queensland down to just a few hundred metres. So that's pretty cold stuff for them. So that big winter change is really coming in over the weekend. It's not in New Zealand yet. So Sunday sees low pressure around the top of the country. Now this map, because these lows are really fickle, it's probably a good word for them, they might change shape from what's on the map here. Lower end stuff can be a little tricky, which means some of the downpours you see on the map now for Sunday might shift 100 kilometres or so around by the time we actually get to Sunday. So it's a little messy, but basically you can see low pressure around the North Island, or at least nearby, bringing in some clouds, some rain, some showers. South Island and lower parts of the North Island at this stage look dry, but that cold change is coming in. So let's go to Monday now, and it starts on Monday in the very south of the country. You basically got high pressure out over Australia, high pressure to the north of New Zealand by Monday next week, and there is low pressure in the New Zealand area. So as that high from Australia moves further towards Tasmania, the big southerly flow comes in with it, the one that's going up to Queensland here on Monday. So polar air arrives in the South Island on Monday, and by midnight Monday, now we start to see that snow level lowering. Now I know this is really pixelated. Someone described it yesterday as Minecraft. It's pretty accurate. The thing about data is, if the data, when you sort of zoom out at it, if it's accurate, it doesn't really matter if it's a bit blocky like this. So basically the grid size, how much they're sort of expecting snow, covers a very large area, which means it sort of fills in the valleys as well where snow is not going to be falling in as many places. But you get the idea, it's coming down to a couple of hundred metres. So wherever you see the blue, anywhere that's above 200, 300, 400 metres, very likely to get some snow. If you're in the green zone, that's just showers. We are seeing some forecasts predicting snow flurries down to some parts of the Canterbury Plains, Dunedin, northern Southland, but whether that's very much to settle or not, it's borderline. New Zealand's always a bit funny with snow because it can be snowing 20 metres above you, but by the time it lands on the ground, it's rain. So that's where we're seeing the snow coming through. Not a big snow event low down, at least not at this stage. And by noon Tuesday, this is a 24-hour rainfall map, not just the snapshot at lunchtime. So all the wet weather from lunchtime Monday to lunchtime Tuesday is showing up here. So if you think about the snow, you got some heavy falls up through the Southern Alps in the actual mountains and coming down into some lower areas. So Canterbury, especially further up into the plains, places like Oxford and Mount Somers and those areas, you might see some snow flurries around, as might people around Dunedin and the Catlins and northern Southland. And then you see the polar airflow goes right up to northern New Zealand by about lunchtime or certainly into the early afternoon. So now we start to see the rain around Central Plateau and the southern ranges, Mount Taranaki as well, getting a dusting of snow. And there might be some heavy falls in that central part of the country. So the snow area is a bit borderline. This is the temperature trends for Oxford, Canterbury. This is a Tuesday at 1 p.m. The wind chill is 2 degrees at the warmest part of the day. So if you've got livestock, that could be a problem if it's newborn livestock, that is. And so the snow flurry symbol showing up there. You can get this under trends, under the free Weather Watch New Zealand app. And if you want to spend money, you can do that if you want to set alerts, get frost alerts or whatever temperature you want to know about. You can set the alerts for $6.99 a month. Little plug there. Okay, let's move on. Here is 9 o'clock Tuesday. So now we're seeing that colder weather go through. So if you think about it, it starts late Monday night, and then by Tuesday night, it's coming into the North Island, and then overnight going into Wednesday, it basically clears away. So you can see these are on the tops of the mountains and around Central Plateau. Take a look at our local forecast. If you live in Ohakune or Waiouru or other areas, Turangi, it will tell you rainfall and whether or not the snow symbol is showing up. Let's go to lunchtime Wednesday. So it is still cold right around the country. Not as wet though. High pressure's moving in. Got a few showers stuck around the eastern side of the North Island, probably around Wellington as well, as a southerly coming through. Many other places seeing the sun coming back out, or at least the skies drying out. Powerful, very powerful high pressure zone coming through. And by Thursday, 10:37, this is the time of the year when you get the biggest high pressure zones. The most powerful ones usually are around August and September. They love the cold weather, and so they get bigger and bigger, but they're in kind of blobs. One big mountain of high pressure comes through, then you get a rain band. In summer, they're not as big, they're not as mountainous, but they all join up. And so you get one high after the other. That brings in that summer weather where you don't get enough rain. So high pressure zones behave differently in winter. And so quite normal to see a very powerful one like that moving through. So frosty weather will be certainly around the South Island on Thursday, not so much the north if that southeasterly wind or easterly keeps blowing through. And our last forecast map for Friday, high pressure moving over the South Island. But look what's happening to the north again. Seems to be for the last full month now. We've been seeing a number of low pressure zones forming here. There's a lot of low pressure up around the tropics. So we'll be watching that closely because last year when there was all the chatter about La Nina, we weren't seeing things like this as frequently. This year does seem a little bit differently. Sea surface temperatures are well above average in a number of areas towards the south. And while that's not connected to La Nina, it does kind of feed into more wet weather, because when you get a low over the warmer waters, it produces more rain. So we'll be watching what happens there over the coming weeks. Before I go, 7-day rainfall that's expected. That's most of the rainfall that's falling around the country. So not a huge amount of moisture into the South Island. Despite that winter weather condition, you may not be seeing huge amounts. So if it does snow in some spots, it may not be a lot. But once you go further up into Canterbury and certainly some of the mountainous areas, those rainfall numbers or the precipitation numbers go up, whether that's rain or snow. And in the North Island, low pressure obviously around there, some higher rainfall numbers around Northland, perhaps northern parts of Auckland, off towards the northeast corner of the North Island. And then in this sort of central area, mostly around Central Plateau, but some of it might come over into dry parts of Hawke's Bay. So fingers crossed, get some wet weather before spring turns up. That'll be good in some parts of Hawke's Bay, not all. Hawke's Bay, as I said the other day, has some of the driest and wettest weather in the North Island at the moment as far as rainfall anomaly over the last couple of weeks. So there's been some pockets of rain that's been quite a bit, and others have had not enough. So it's a funny kind of region at the moment, and Canterbury's a bit like that too. We've got pockets of very wet and some very dry. So this is just part of the balancing act that Mother Nature does. That is all from me. I'll see you again next week. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.